Ciao.
2 steps down. 2 steps down.
You have so much to share. I feel bad. But I asked to you, I'm so happy to have you. I'll do it. She's the best. Well, no, I have had other people at Wartburg even do a nice job. So gather around and listen in. This is a gorgeous room.
Yeah, this room was planned 800 years before as the parlor, the living and sleeping room for the noble ladies. And that means also for St. Elizabeth. That was also her living and sleeping room. And therefore this room got the name Elizabeth Bower from the 17th century. Heatable room. In the corner there's a big fireplace. That was a luck that this room was heatable. Not all rooms were heatable in medieval castles. That's the counterpart to the Knight's Hall. But the medieval women didn't see this ornate mosaic because it was laid out only in 1907. The reason was the 700th anniversary of Elizabeth's birth year. Here are shown her life steps, and she was born in 1207, and in 1907 this mosaic was established to honor her life and work. It's an excellent handwork. They need for that about 4 million of little stones out of glass, gold leaf, and mother of pearl. Excellent handwork, and the theme is important. Elizabeth wasn't born here at the castle. She was born as an Hungarian princess in 1207. 4 years after her birth, envoys of the Thuringian court went with valuable gifts to the Hungarian king to court the 4-year-old princess. That was for both sides, for the Hungarian king and for the Thuringian count, a useful political connection. And so this courting finished successful, and Elizabeth arrived here as a 4-year-old bride of the son of the Thuringian count. This symbolic engagement you can find over here. She was educated here. She was able to read, to write, to learn French and Latin. And at the age of 14 years, she was married to Ludwig IV. She became a countess, and 1 year later, she got the first of her 3 children. That is nowadays astonishing to hear that, but that was marriage policy in a time of short life expectancy. The parents decided whom the children had to be married to, and that happened very early. The average of the life expectancy in that time was around about 35 years. And so the childhood had to occur very fast and under big pressure. For example, her emperor, the grandson of Barbarossa, Frederick II, he was crowned emperor at the age of 13 years. He was able to speak 6 languages. In that era, in these high society circles, they were able to reign from the age of 12 years. And so the childhood had to occur very fast. But Elizabeth didn't meet the expectations as a countess because she attended to the poor and sick people. She founded hospitals. She helped and worked there. So she took care about lepers. She spent a lot of money to the poor and sick people. And of course, her relatives here in the courtly society weren't very happy about that. It must have been a difficult connection between her goals and the goals of her rich and mighty relatives. But many people in her time believed that the practices of the Catholic Church weren't based anymore on the Bible. As 300 years later, in the Luther time began, and many people in her time tried to find a way of emulation of Jesus Christ based on the Bible and poverty, in opposition to the rich Catholic Church. There was that time in which the first wedding orders were established. The Franciscans, the Dominicans, the Beguines, the number of the heretics increased, thousands of them were killed. That was the beginning of the Inquisition, the beginning of the torture. That means Elizabeth was a shining member of that poverty movement, the first Reformation wave of the Catholic Church. In the Luther time, that was the second wave. And her husband loved her a lot. He tried to protect her from the hate of the courtly society, but he was forced to take part in the next crusade in which he died. And that crusade ship you can see over here. He set out for that crusade in 1227. And the goal of that crusade was to free the grave of Jesus Christ. That means the crusaders had to go to Jerusalem without cars, without planes. They started here in the middle of winter, began to hike, crossed the snowy Alps by foot with luggage, armed horses, crossed whole Italy, and in south of Italy they gathered in July in 1227 to cross over the Mediterranean to reach Jerusalem. In south of Italy it's almost North Africa, and that's in the summertime really hot. 40 degrees in the shade, Celsius. 60,000 crusaders on one place, no sanitary facilities, water was a problem, food was a problem, plagues came. 50% of the crusaders never saw the Holy Land, they died on the way. And that was the 5th crusade already. And in that one also Elizabeth's husband died, and that means at the age of 20 years as a mother of 3 children, Elizabeth became a widow. And mentally she felt alone. Her husband protected her until his death. And then her brother-in-law became the next count. We believe he poisoned the son of Elizabeth to stay the next count. He himself had no children. And at that moment the husband was dead, the son was poisoned, he had no children, the male line died. And then this big territory was divided. The Thuringian part with Wartburg Castle became a part of Saxony, but they didn't need this castle as a residence, they owned another one. And so very early this castle fell in political oblivion and stayed insignificant until the 19th century, and therefore this castle was a fine place to hide for Martin Luther later on, because it was for so long time so insignificant, and in his time a nice place to hide someone. That will be the scene for the next room. That he forced Elizabeth to leave the castle, he succeeded. Elizabeth left the castle and went with several stations to Wartburg, small town in Hessen, near Frankfurt. And in Wartburg, a new hospital was constructed for her, and there she lived and worked until her death at the age of 24 years.
How many of you have a hospital that you know named St. Elizabeth?
No.
I have one in my town, St. Elizabeth. I go to St. E's.
Yeah.
It's because of St. Elizabeth.
Yeah. And she died very early. 3 pregnancies, hard work, less food, probably a tuberculosis, many things came there together. And only 4 years after her death, she was canonized by the Pope. And in our days, you can travel around the globe, you can find in every country schools, churches, hospitals named after her. That means in the 10 years of her impact between 14 and 24, she left her marks which have a lasting effect even 800 years after her lifetime. And she's the only saint which is adored by Catholic and Lutheran people, also by Luther. Luther normally fought against that adoration of saints because he didn't want to have a mediator between the believer and God, but he believed that she was his theological predecessor, a shining representative of the first Reformation wave of the Catholic Church, as Luther was in the second wave. Special woman, that symbol of charity, helping, love in our days. And after this special woman, a special man is waiting upstairs. The next one is the chapel, and there's waiting Martin Luther as the next important scene. Yeah.